which happened to be the only other cab in the street. We got to the church first, and when the four-wheeler drove up, we waited for him to step out. But he never did. And when the cabman got down from the box and looked, there was no one there. The cabman said that he could not imagine what had become of him, for he had seen him get in with his own eyes. That was the last Friday, Mr. Holmes, and I have never seen nor heard anything since then to throw any light upon what became of him.
It seems to me that you have been very shamefully treated, said Holmes.
Oh, no, sir. He was too good and kind to leave me so. Why, all the morning he was saying to me that whatever happened I was to be true, and that even if someone quite unforeseen occurred to separate us, I was always to remember that I was pledged to him, and that would cling to his pledge sooner or later. It seems strange talk for a wedding morning, but what has happened since gives a meaning to it.
Most certainly it does. Your only opinion is, then, that some unforeseen catastrophe has occurred to him?
Yes, sir. I believe that he foresaw some danger, or else he would not have talked so. And then I think what he foresaw happened.
But you have no notion as to what it could have been?
None.
One more question. How did your mother take the matter?
She was angry, and said that I was never to speak of the matter again.
And your father? Did he tell him?
Yes, and he seemed to think with me that something had happened, and that I should hear of Hosmer again. As he said, what interest could anyone have in bringing me to the doors of the church and then leaving me? Now, if he had borrowed my money, or if he had married me and got my money settled on him, that might be some reason. But Hosmer was very independent upon money, and would never look at another shilling of mine. And yet, what could have happened? Why could he not write? Oh, it drives me half mad to think of it, and I could not sleep a wink at night.
She pulled out a little handkerchief out of her muff, and began to sob heavily into it. I shall glance into the case for you, said Holmes, rising, and I have no doubt that we shall reach some definite result. Let the weight of the matter rest upon me for now, and do not let your mind dwell upon it further. Above all, try to let Mr. Hosmer Angel vanish from your memory, as he has done from your life.
Then you don't think I'll see him again?
I fear not.
Then what has happened to him?
You'll leave that question in my hands. I should like an accurate description of him, and any letters of which you could spare.
I advertised for him in last Saturday's Chronicle, said she. Here is the slip, and here are 4 letters from him.
Thank you. And your address?
Number 31 Lyons Place, Camberwell.
Mr. Angel's address you never had, I understand. Where is your father's place of business?
He travels for Westhouse and Marbank, the great claret importers of Fenchurch Street.
Thank you. You have made your statement very clearly. You will leave the papers here, and remember the advice which I have given you. Let the whole incident be a sealed book, and do not allow it to affect your life.
You are very kind, Mr. Holmes, but I cannot do that. I shall be true to Hosmer. He shall find me when ready when he comes back.
For all the preposterous hat and the vacant face, there was something noble in the simple faith of our visitor which compelled our respect. She laid her little bundle of papers upon the table, and went her way, with a promise to come again whenever she might be summoned. Sherlock Holmes sat silent for a few minutes, with his fingertips still pressed together, his legs stretched out in front of him, and his gaze directed upward to the ceiling. Then he took down from the rack the old and oily clay pipe, which was to him a counsellor, and having lit it, he leaned back in his chair, with the thick blue cloud wreath spinning up from him, and a look of infinite languor in his face. Quite an interesting study, that maiden, he observed. I found her more interesting than a little problem, which, by the way, is a rather a trite one. You will find parallel cases if you consult my index in Andover in '77, and there was something sort of at The Hague last year. Old as is the idea, however, there was 1 or 2 details which were new to me, but the maiden herself was most instructive. You appear to read a good deal upon her which was quite invisible to me, I remarked. Not invisible, but unnoticed, Watson. You did not know where to look, so you missed all that was important. I can never bring you to realize the importance of sleeves, the suggestiveness of thumbnails, or the great issues that may hang from a bootlace. Now what did you gather from that woman's appearance? Describe it. Well, she had a slate-coloured, broad-brimmed straw hat, with a feather of brickish red. Her jacket was black, with black beads sewn upon it, and a fringe of little black jet ornaments. Her dress was brown, rather darker than coffee colour, and with a little purple plush at the neck and the sleeves. Her gloves were greyish, and worn through the right forefinger. Her boots I didn't observe. She had small, round, hanging gold earrings, and a general air of being fairly well-to-do in a vulgar, comfortable, easy-going way. Sherlock Holmes clapped his hands softly together and chuckled. "Upon my word, Watson, you are coming along wonderfully. You have really done well indeed. It is true that you have missed everything of importance, but you have hit upon the method, and you have a quick eye for colour. Never trust to general impressions, my boy, but concentrate yourself upon details. My first glance is always at a woman's sleeve. In a man it is perhaps better first to take the knee of the trouser. As you observe, this woman had plush upon her sleeves, which is most useful material for showing traces. The double line a little above her wrist, where the typewritist presses against the table, was beautifully defined. The sewing machine of the hand type leaves a similar mark, but only on the left arm, and on the side of it farthest from the thumb, instead of it being right across the broadest part, as this was. And then glanced at her face, and observed in the dint of a pince-nez at either side of her nose. I ventured at the remark upon short sight in typewriting, which seemed to surprise her. It surprised me, but surely it was obvious. I was then much surprised and interested on glancing down to observe that, though the boots she was wearing were not unlike any other, they were really odd ones, the one having a slightly decorated toe-cap, and the other a plain one. One was buttoned only in the 2 lower buttons out of 5, and the other at the 1st, 3rd, and 5th. Now, when you see a young lady, otherwise neatly dressed, has come away from home with odd boots, half-buttoned, it is no great deduction to say that she came away in a hurry. What else? I asked, keenly interested, as I always was by my friend's inclusive, decisive reasoning. I noted in passing that she had written a note before leaving home, but after being fully dressed. You observed that her right glove was torn at the forefinger, but you did not apparently see that both glove and finger were stained with violet ink. She had written in a hurry and dipped her pen too deep. It must have been this morning, or the mark would not remain clear upon the finger. All this is amusing, rather though elementary, but I must go back to business, Watson. Would you mind reading me the advertised description of Mr. Hosmer Angel? I held the little printed slip to the light. Missing, it said, on the morning of the 14th, a gentleman named Hosmer Angel, about 5'7" in height, strongly built, swallow complexion, black hair, a little bald in the centre, bushy, black side whiskers and moustache, tinted glasses, slight infirmity of speech, was dressed, when last seen, in black frock coat faced with silk, black waistcoat, gold Albert chain, and grey Harris tweed trousers with brown gaiters over elastic-sided boots. Known to have been employed in an office in Leadenhall Street. Anybody bringing— "That will do," said Holmes. "As to the letters," he continued, glancing over them, "they are very commonplace. Absolutely no clue in them to Mr. Angel, save that he quotes Balzac once. There is a remarkable point, however, which will no doubt strike you. They are typewritten," I remarked. "Not only that, but the signature is typewritten. Look at the neat little Hosmer Angel at the bottom. There is a date, you see, but no superscription except Leadenhall Street, which is rather vague. The point about the signature is very suggestive. In fact, we may call it conclusive." "Of what?" "My dear fellow, it is possible you do not see how strongly it bears upon the case?" "I cannot say that I do, unless it were really wished to able to deny his signature if an action for breach of promise were instituted. No, that was not the point. However, I shall write 2 letters, which should settle the matter. One is to a firm in the city, the other is to the young lady's stepfather, Mr. Windybank, asking him whether he could meet us here at 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. It is just as well that we should do business with the male relatives. And now, Doctor, we can do nothing until the answers to all those little letters come, so we may put our little problem upon the shelf for the interim." I had had so many reasons to believe in my friend's subtle powers of reasoning and extraordinary energy in action, that I felt that he must be some solid grounds for the assured and easy demeanour with which he treated the singular mystery which he had been called upon to fathom. Only once I had known him to fail, in the case of the King of Bohemia and of the Irene Adler photograph. But when I looked back to the weird business of the sign of 4 and the extraordinary circumstances connected with the study in scarlet, I felt that it would be a strange tangle indeed which he could not unravel. I left him then, still puffing at his black clay pipe, with the conviction that where I came again on the next evening, I would find that he held in his hands all the clues which would lead up to the identity of the disappearing bridegroom of Miss Mary Sutherland. A professional case of great gravity was engaging my own attention at the time, and the whole of next day I was busy at the bedside with the sufferer. It was not until close upon 6 o'clock that I found myself free, and was able to spring a hansom and drive to Baker Street, half afraid that I might be too late to assist in the denouement of our little mystery. I found Sherlock Holmes alone, however half asleep, with his long thin form curled upon the recesses of his armchair. A formidable array of bottles and test tubes, with the pungent, cleanly smell of hydrochloric acid, told me that he had spent his day in the chemical work which was so dear to him. "Well, have you solved it?" I asked as I entered. "Yes. It was the bisulfate of baryta." No, the mystery!" I cried. "Oh, that! I thought of the salts that I had been working upon. There was never any mystery in the matter, though, as I said yesterday, some of the details are of great interest. The only drawback is there is no law, I fear, that can touch the scoundrel." "But who was he, then? And what was his objective in deserting Miss Mary Sutherland?" The question was hardly out of my mouth, and Holmes had not yet opened his lips to reply, when we heard a heavy footfall in the passage and a tap at the door. "This is the girl's father, Mr. James Windybank," said Holmes. "He has written to me to say that he would be here at 6. "Come in!" The man who entered was a sturdy, middle-sized fellow, some 30 years of age, clean-shaven and sallow-skinned, with a bland, insinuating manner, and a pair of wonderfully sharp and penetrating grey eyes. He shot a questioning glance at each of us, placed his shiny top hat upon the sideboard, and with a slight bow settled down to the next chair. "Good evening, Mr. James Windybank," said Holmes. "I think that this typewritten letter is from you, in which you had made an appointment with me for 6 o'clock. "Yes, sir. I am afraid that I am a little late, but I am not quite my own master, you know. I am sorry that Miss Mary Sutherland has troubled you about this little matter, for I think it is far better not to wash linen of the sort into the public. It was quite against my wishes that when she came, but she is a very excitable, impulsive girl, as you may have noticed, and she is not easily controlled when she has made up her mind on a point. Of course I do not mind you so much, as you are not connected with the official police, but it is not pleasant to have a family misfortune like this noised abroad. Besides, it is a useless expense, for how could you possibly find Miss Hosmer Angel?" "On the contrary," said Holmes quietly, "I have every reason to believe that I will succeed in discovering Mr. Hosmer Angel." Mr. Windybank gave a violent start and dropped his gloves. "I am delighted to hear it," he said. "It is a curious thing," remarked Holmes, "that a typewriter has really quite as much individuality as a man's handwriting. Unless they are quite new, no two of them write exactly alike. Some letters get more worn than others, and some wear only on one side. Now you remark in this note of yours, Mr. Windybank, that in every case there is some little slurring over the E, and a slight defect in the tail of the R. And there are 14 other characteristics, but those are the more obvious." "We all do our correspondence with the machine in the office, and no doubt it is a little worn," our visitor answered, glancing keenly at Holmes with his bright little eyes. "And now I will show you what is really a very interesting study, Mr. Windybank," Holmes continued. "I think of writing another little monograph some day on the typewriter and its relation to crime. It is a subject to which I have devoted some of little attention. I have here 4 letters which purport to come from the missing man. They are all typewritten. In each case, not only are the E's slurred, but the R's tailless, but you'll observe, if you care to use my magnifying lens, that the 14 other characteristics to which I have alluded are there as well." Mr. Windybank sprang out of his chair and picked up his hat. "I cannot waste time over this sort of fantastic talk, Mr. Holmes," he said. "If you catch the man, catch him, and let me know when you have done it." "Certainly," said Holmes, stepping over and turning the key in the door. "I'll let you know, then, that I have caught him." "What? Where?" shouted Mr. Windybank, turning white to his lips and glancing about him like a rat in a trap. "Oh, it won't do it, really it won't," said Holmes suavely. "There is no possible getting out of it, Mr. Windybank. It is quite too transparent. It is a very bad compliment when you said that it was impossible for me to solve so simple a question. That's right. Sit down and let us talk it over." Our visitor collapsed into a chair, with a ghastly face and a glitter of moisture on his brow. It's not actionable," he stammered. "I am very much afraid that it is not. but between ourselves, Windybank, it was as